I've always prided myself on carving my path, which is why living alone in the bustling heart of the city, just a short walk from my job as an editor at a major publishing house, suits me perfectly. Although my parents are just a call away, life here demands self-reliance. Saturday, craving a break from the routine, I traded manuscripts for the outdoors and ventured to the local park, my favorite retreat for some solitude. Absorbed in my thoughts, perhaps more than advisable, I was oblivious to the bike lane ahead until a sudden shout of, "Watch out!" jolted me. I sidestepped just in time as a cyclist skidded to a halt right where I would have been moments later. "Jesus, lady, you trying to get yourself killed?" he exclaimed, catching his breath. He was visibly annoyed yet relieved to have avoided a collision. Embarrassed, I apologized, admitting my distraction. "Yeah, I'm fine, but you need to watch where you're going," he responded, his irritation softened by genuine concern. Grateful he stopped in time, I introduced myself. "All right, no harm done. Just stay clear of the bike path, okay?" he said. "Deal," I replied with a small smile. "I'm Sophia, by the way." "Frank," he returned, extending a hand. Our awkward encounter led to coffee at a nearby cafe. Frank, who worked in car sales, was straightforward and humorous, though admittedly not much of a reader. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, spanning from literature to automobiles, and before we knew it, hours had passed. Frank joked about the afternoon's near miss as we prepared to leave. "Didn't think I'd end up spending my day with the woman who nearly wrecked my bike," he said. "And I didn't think I'd be thanking the guy who called me a killer on our first encounter," I quipped, laughter between us easing the tension. From that serendipitous meeting, Frank and I found ourselves drawn together more frequently. What started as casual coffee dates and city walks evolved into deep conversations and dinners at places that quickly became our spots. His blunt manner was refreshingly genuine, and as we grew closer, the relationship blossomed from simple meetings into something deeper. As our connection deepened, meeting Frank's family became inevitable. He had prepped me for his somewhat traditional mother, a stark contrast to our easygoing bond. But there was something about Frank, his unpolished charm perhaps, that was both familiar and thrilling, a combination that had effortlessly turned our chance meeting into a promising relationship. I wasn't quite ready for what awaited us when we arrived at Frank's house. It was evident from the outset that his parents had been eagerly anticipating our visit. His mother, a hearty woman with a warm smile, greeted us at the door. She gave Frank a massive hug and scrutinized me a little too intently. "Sophia, dear, it's so wonderful to finally meet you. Frank has shared so much about you," she said, pulling me into a hug that seemed more about sizing me up than welcoming me. "Thank you, Mrs. Barbara. It's lovely to meet you too," I responded, attempting to echo her warmth. Once settled in the living room, Mrs. Barbara dove straight into conversation. "So, Sophia, Frank tells us you work at a publishing house. That must be quite fascinating dealing with books all day." "It is, Mrs. Barbara. I thoroughly enjoy my job. It's rewarding to be part of the creative process," I replied, glancing at Frank, hoping he'd help guide the conversation. "That's nice, dear. But you know, once you two settle down, you'll have to prioritize what's truly important. Family should come first, and a woman's touch in the home is indispensable," she continued without hesitation. Frank's father, who had been quietly watching the exchange, nodded in agreement. "Absolutely, a stable home is the cornerstone of a good life, right, son?" Frank shifted uneasily but agreed. "Yeah, Mom, Sophia's good at managing her time, though. She's organized and astute." "Of course, but managing a home is a different kettle of fish. It's a full-time commitment," his mother insisted, fixing her eyes on me as if decoding a mystery. I cleared my throat, feeling the need to assert myself. "I believe it's entirely feasible to balance both, Mrs. Barbara. Modern families often have two working parents. It's all about teamwork, isn't it?" Mrs. Barbara smiled, but her eyes didn't quite mirror the sentiment. "Oh dear, that's a nice idea, but in reality, children need their mother, and a home needs a woman's touch, not just a quick tidy up." The conversation shifted, but her words lingered. Dinner felt more like navigating a minefield. Every compliment about the food seemed like a subtle hint for me to take notes. "Sophia, do you cook often?" Mrs. Barbara inquired as she served a perfectly roasted chicken. "Occasionally when time allows. Work keeps me quite busy," I replied, keeping the tone light. "Ah, you'll find there's great satisfaction in keeping your family well-fed and your home in order," she remarked, passing the mashed potatoes as if imparting wisdom. Frank nudged me under the table, a silent plea to stay calm. I just smiled, sipping my wine a tad more than usual, contemplating how the evening felt more like an interview than a meal. Despite the initial reservations from that first meeting, Frank and I got engaged after a year of dating. Driven by love and optimism, we planned a modest wedding, just close family and friends, nothing elaborate, exactly as we wanted. The wedding day was a whirlwind of smiles, flowers, and a small congregation of well-wishers at a quaintly decorated local community hall. The wedding day was filled with a mixture of excitement and nerves. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. We exchanged vows, rings, and a kiss that marked a new beginning. Applause broke out from the small gathering, and in that moment, everything felt just perfect. At the reception, amidst casual conversations and light snacks, Frank brought up future plans. "So, I was thinking about our next steps, about moving to a bigger place," he said as I nibbled on a celery stick. "Sure, we've talked about needing more space. What did you find?" I replied, curious. "There's this great apartment, bigger and nice. It's actually near where I grew up," he added, observing my reaction carefully. "Near your parents?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, it's convenient, and Mom and Dad would be thrilled to have us close by. Plus, Dad mentioned he could help us out with the rent for a bit," he explained. I paused, contemplating the frequent visits from his mom that would likely follow. "That's generous, but Frank, you know how I value our independence. I don't want to feel like we're not on our own," I expressed my concerns. Frank squeezed my hand reassuringly. "I get it, Sophia, but think about it. It's a good financial move, and it'll be nice to have family nearby, for when we start our own." I wasn't entirely convinced, but agreed to consider it. "Okay, we can try it, but if it feels too crowded, we need to reconsider," I said. "Deal," Frank replied with a smile, and we returned to our guests. Moving in turned out to be quite the endeavor. The apartment was indeed spacious and boasted a beautiful view of a nearby park, but it also added 30 minutes to my daily commute to work. Frank's parents were frequent visitors. His mom often came by with housewarming gifts that seemed more about imposing her taste than anything else. "Sophia, dear, I brought you some nice curtains, much better than those drab ones you picked out," she said one afternoon, brandishing a garish set of floral curtains. "Thanks, Mrs. Barbara, but I actually like the ones we have," I responded, attempting to keep my tone light. Undeterred, she insisted, "Oh, but these will brighten up the living room so much more," as she began swapping them out. Each visit from Mrs. Barbara brought tension. I felt like I was tiptoeing through my own home. Frank tried to mediate, but our ideas of being close to family differed. Over time, discussions about our lifestyle choices became more frequent. Frank began advocating for traditional family roles. "Sophia, think about it. You managing the home, me bringing in the cash. It just makes sense," he'd argue firmly. I'd counter by pulling up our budget on my laptop, showing him the practicality of two incomes, especially given current economic uncertainties like pandemics and recessions. "We're more secure this way," I'd argue. Frank, frustrated, would shake his head. "It's not just about money, Sophia. It's about stability," he'd insist. Meanwhile, Mrs. Barbara turned our apartment into a second home for herself, her visits often feeling more like inspections. "Sophia, you're not thinking of staying in that job forever, are you?" she'd begin, almost immediately upon my arrival home. I'd barely had time to remove my coat before she started questioning my life choices. "I actually enjoy my work, Mrs. Barbara. "It's important to me," I'd reply, striving to remain composed and polite. She'd tisk and roam around, her fingers testing surfaces for dust. "Well, if you were home more, maybe this place would be cleaner," she'd critique, holding up a dusty finger as if presenting crucial evidence. "It's clean enough. We live here," I'd respond, trying to assert that our home was just that, ours. "But it seems like you're expecting miracles from a single income," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. He was silent, perhaps realizing the financial tension was not solely my making. The stress of managing everything under the scrutinizing eyes of his mother was exhausting. Every visit she made felt like an interrogation, flinging open the refrigerator to audit what I'd stocked. "This isn't enough food for a healthy meal, and look at these leftovers. Don't you cook fresh?" she'd complain, her disapproval palpable. I needed Frank to understand the pressure I was under. "Your mom is overstepping, and it's stressing me out. I'm trying to meet her expectations, but it's overwhelming," I confided to him one evening. Frank, ever the peacemaker, replied with a sigh, "She's just trying to help, Sophia. Maybe if you were home more, things wouldn't be so tense." But that night, after a grueling day at work, I came home to find Frank upset about the state of the house and the simple dinner I had managed to prepare. "This place is a mess, Sophia, and dinner's it's not up to par," he complained, poking at the pasta dish disdainfully. My frustration boiled over. "I'm doing my best, Frank. I'm working full-time and trying to keep up with the house, but it's never good enough for you or your mom," I snapped back. "Well, maybe if you weren't trying to do both, you'd actually do one right," he retorted sharply. I was stunned. "Are you saying I need to choose between my job and our home?" I asked, feeling the sting of his words. "If you can't handle both, then yes. Maybe you should just be a housewife. Honestly, if things don't change, I don't see how this can work out," he threatened, his tone cold and serious. The ultimatum hit me hard. The life I had built, my career, my independence, was at risk. In a bid to salvage our relationship, I made a decision. I spoke with my boss about quitting to be a full-time housewife. My boss was surprised and disappointed, knowing how much I valued my career. But then he offered a lifeline: remote work. I could continue editing from home. It wasn't the perfect solution, but it was a compromise I could live with without completely losing myself. I didn't reveal the remote work arrangement to Frank. Instead, I told him I had quit my job to focus on our home. His reaction was a mix of relief and joy. "That's great, Sophia. It'll be better for us, you'll see," he said, embracing me, believing we had found peace. Embracing my new role, I managed the household diligently, cooking meals and keeping everything immaculate for when Frank returned from work. But every morning after he left, I opened my laptop and resumed my editorial duties remotely. This delicate balance of juggling my secret professional life with the domestic life Frank believed I had embraced became my new normal. I funneled the income from my remote work into a separate account, building a financial cushion that Frank was unaware of, just in case. 5 months in, the financial strain of living on a single income became evident. "We're running low on everything, Frank. We need to rethink our budget," I suggested one evening, hoping for a constructive discussion. But Frank's response was dismissive. "What are you talking about? You're just not managing our money right. You need to cut back on spending," he snapped. His words stung. I had been as frugal as possible, always searching for deals, yet it seemed my efforts went unnoticed. The tension between maintaining my secret work life and managing our finances was growing, and I knew something had to give. "It's not enough," I said, my voice laced with frustration and hurt. The next morning, as if on cue, Mrs. Barbara appeared at our doorstep. Frank had informed her about our financial struggles, and she took it upon herself to intervene. "Frank told me you're having trouble with the budget. Let's go shopping and I'll teach you how to do it properly," she declared, her tone brooking no argument. Over the next few days, Mrs. Barbara gave me a crash course in what she called sensible shopping, pointing out the cheapest items at the supermarket, many of which were of questionable quality. This is what you should be buying, Sophia. None of that fancy stuff, she instructed sternly, treating me more like a disobedient child than an adult. She even demonstrated how to dilute dish soap to make it last longer, her piercing gaze watching my every move. You'll learn to make do with less. It's good for you, she insisted, more to convince herself than to guide me. Each receipt was scrutinized, every purchase I made was questioned. Why did you buy this? There's no need for unnecessary trips when there's work to be done at home, she scolded upon finding a bus ticket. The extreme penny pinching wasn't just about saving money. It felt demeaning, as if I was under constant surveillance. The atmosphere in our home became stifling, governed by rules set by Frank and enforced by his mother. One afternoon, feeling overwhelmed, I locked myself in our bedroom and called my mom. I don't know what to do anymore, I confessed, my voice breaking as I described how Mrs. Barbara had been pushing me to stretch every dollar to the extreme, making it feel like we were living in the Great Depression. That's not normal, Sophia, my mom responded firmly. You're supposed to be partners. It sounds like she's trying to control everything, and Frank shouldn't let this happen. Feeling a wave of relief from her support, I continued, I know, Mom. It's just so hard. Every time I try to stand up for myself, it turns into a huge fight. Just then, the bedroom door swung open. Frank stood there, his face twisted with anger, having overheard my conversation. Without a word, he marched over, grabbed the phone from my hand, and ended the call. A wife shouldn't be complaining about her husband and mother-in-law like some kind of traitor, he snapped, his voice cold and harsh. I was stunned. Frank, I was talking to my mom. I needed someone to talk to. That doesn't give you the right to badmouth us, especially not to your mother, he retorted, his eyes narrowing. The argument escalated quickly, voices raised and words thrown that couldn't be taken back. In a huff, Frank stormed out, slamming the door behind him, and left me alone with my tangled thoughts of sadness and frustration. It was well past midnight when I heard the key turn in the lock. Frank stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, his usual stern demeanor replaced by a sloppy, cruel drunkenness. I should have listened to my mom. She warned me about marrying someone like you, he slurred, his words cutting like daggers. I stood up, my anger rising. Frank, you're a grown man. Stop letting your mother run our lives. You don't need her approval for every little thing, I asserted. This only infuriated him more. If you're so unhappy, why don't you just leave? He yelled, stepping close, his voice booming in the confined space of our apartment. It's 2 a.m., Frank. It's not safe, I replied, trying to reason with him even as my voice shook. I don't care. Get out, he shouted, not even looking at me. I hesitated only for a moment before I began to pack the essentials, my phone, some clothes, and a few personal items, ready to leave the oppressive atmosphere that had once been our shared home. As I reached for my wallet to call a taxi, Frank grabbed it from my hands. I earned this money, Sophia. You have no right to it, he declared, venom dripping from his words. A wave of panic washed over me, but then I remembered my secret safety net, my bank account I had quietly been filling. I called a taxi and left without looking back, Frank's angry shouts fading into the background as I closed the door behind me. I sought refuge in a nearby hotel, a temporary sanctuary as dawn broke. The next morning, with my mind spinning from the events, I headed straight to a lawyer's office. It was modest, but the lawyer, Mr. Stephen, was sharp and empathetic. He listened intently as I explained everything, nodding in understanding. We'll get the divorce papers drawn up immediately. You have rights, Sophia, and we'll make sure they're protected, Mr. Stephen assured me, his voice resolute. Armed with my newly drafted divorce papers, I returned to the apartment Frank and I had shared. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the evidence of the previous night's chaos and Frank snoring on the couch. He hadn't even made it to the bedroom. I began packing swiftly, filling boxes and bags with clothes, books, and personal items. Although it felt liberating to leave this chapter behind, there was a weight to every item packed. As I zipped up the last suitcase, Frank stirred. "Sophia, hey, can you grab me a beer?" he mumbled, half asleep and oblivious to the suitcases. Instead of a beer, I placed the divorce papers on the coffee table in front of him. "Here's what I can give you," I said, my voice steady. Frank blinked, slowly coming to. He picked up the papers, scanned them, and smirked. "What's this? Are you serious? Come on, Sophia, just say sorry to me and my mom, promise to follow the rules, and we can forget all this," he said, his tone dismissive. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, Frank, I'm not coming back. Not now, not ever. This is goodbye." I left the apartment, the door clicking shut behind me, a sound that echoed like the locking away of my past. That afternoon, I moved into a rented apartment of my own. It was modest, but entirely mine. Returning to work full-time felt like reclaiming my life. The familiar buzz of the office, the clack of keyboards, and the aroma of brewing coffee were reminders of why I loved my career. I also reconnected with friends and family, mending the relationships that had been strained during my tumultuous marriage. Catching up over long dinners and weekend brunches, I shared laughs and stories, feeling the strength of these connections that had endured so much. One late afternoon, as I was wrapping up a manuscript, my phone buzzed. It was Lisa, a close friend from the city who had been a crucial support through my toughest times. "Hey, Lisa, what's up?" I answered, a smile spreading across my face as I heard her enthusiastic voice. "Sophia, I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, a few of us are getting together this weekend at that new cafe downtown. You have to come. It's been ages and everyone's dying to see you," she said. The cafe meetup was exactly what I needed. Laughter, updates, and a gentle nudge back into the social world. It felt good to be among friends again, sharing stories and listening to theirs, feeling the camaraderie I'd missed. As the gathering wound down, Lisa caught me by the arm as we were leaving. "Hey, how are you doing, Sophia?" she asked, her gaze piercing, showing genuine concern for my well-being. With a patient exhale, I allowed myself a moment of honesty with Lisa. "I'm getting there," I confessed. "It's been tough, but I think I'm finally starting to move forward for real." Rebuilding my life was a slow process, but every day felt a bit more like progress. A few months into reclaiming my independence, I was deep into editing a particularly challenging manuscript when my phone interrupted me. Frank's name flashed on the screen. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I answered, my voice calm and controlled. "Sophia, hey, I need to talk to you." Frank's voice came through, sounding hesitant and slightly desperate. "What is it, Frank?" I asked, my tone devoid of warmth, not in the mood for small talk. "Well, I got fired," he blurted out, "and things are tight. I was wondering—" His voice trailed off. "You need money," I finished for him, already seeing where the conversation was heading. "Yeah, and well, I was thinking maybe we could start over, you know? If you apologize to my mom and me, and we could try again, you could take care of us," he added, his voice tinged with hope, almost pleading. I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter. The notion was so absurd that it took me a moment to compose myself. "Frank, you're joking, right? You want me to apologize, support you, and come back to all that mess? You've ditched your principles pretty fast, haven't you?" I asked, incredulity coloring my tone. There was a pause on the other end, the silence speaking volumes. "So, is that a no?" he finally asked. "Yes, Frank, that's a no, a big one," I replied, still chuckling at the absurdity of his request. "I'm doing well, really well, actually, and I'm not about to give up my freedom and happiness for another round of whatever that was." Hanging up, I shook my head in disbelief. The call was a stark reminder of how far I had come and how much I had changed. I was free, truly free, and it felt exhilarating. Turning back to my manuscript, a smile played on my lips. The idea of jumping back into a relationship wasn't appealing at the moment. I was enjoying my independence too much, savoring the peace that came with it. Each day brought new opportunities to strengthen my path, and I was fully committed to exploring where it might lead without looking back.